In a quiet corner of a monastery's archive, a fragile scrap of parchment tells the story of a woman named Eleanor. She was the daughter of a merchant, promised to a wealthy man she did not love. But in the hushed corridors of her family's chapel, she met Thomas, a clerk who copied sermons by day and dreamed of her by night. Their love grew in stolen glances and hurried conversations, but it was ink that bound them together. Eleanor dared to write him secret letters, each folded carefully, sealed with a drop of wax from her candle. Her words were filled with tenderness, but every stroke of the quill was dangerous. If her father discovered them, her honor and, perhaps, her life would be destroyed. A woman's reputation was fragile, and a single whisper could condemn her. Centuries later, one of her letters was found, pressed inside a prayer book. The ink had faded, but the longing was clear. I would rather burn for love than freeze in a loveless life. Those whispered words survived when she could not. A testament to the peril of passion in an unforgiving age. In a medieval town, Anne lived under constant watch. Married off at 15 to a man twice her age, she endured cold silences and cruel commands. Yet her heart belonged to another Julian, a poet who traveled with songs and stories. Their only refuge was paper, smuggled through market baskets and prayer scrolls. Anne's letters were more than declarations of love. They were acts of rebellion. She wrote of dreams where she walked freely, hand in hand with Julian, away from the weight of duty. But every secret note carried mortal risk. If her husband found them, Anne could be dragged before the bishop's court, accused of adultery, and cast out or worse. One evening, as Anne prepared her final letter, soldiers stormed the street. A neighbor had whispered rumors. Anne burned her words in the hearth, the smoke rising like a silent prayer. Julian fled, leaving only a scrap of verse hidden in her sewing chest. That scrap, discovered centuries later, read, "To write you is to live. To be silenced is to die." The peril of paper was real, but so was its power and love, though forbidden, refused to vanish. In a medieval town, Anne lived under constant watch. Married off at 15 to a man twice her age, she endured cold silences and cruel commands. Yet her heart belonged to another Julian, a poet who traveled with songs and stories. Their only refuge was paper, smuggled through market baskets and prayer scrolls. Anne's letters were more than declarations of love. They were acts of rebellion. She wrote of dreams where she walked freely, hand in hand with Julian, away from the weight of duty. But every secret note carried mortal risk. If her husband found them, Anne could be dragged before the bishop's court, accused of adultery, and cast out or worse. One evening, as Anne prepared her final letter, soldiers stormed the street. A neighbor had whispered rumors. Anne burned her words in the hearth, the smoke rising like a silent prayer. Julian fled, leaving only a scrap of verse hidden in her sewing chest. That scrap, discovered centuries later, read, "To write you is to live. To be silenced is to die." The peril of paper was real, but so was its power and love, though forbidden, refused to vanish. In a crumbling castle, Lady Isolde lived as the wife of a warlord, whose sword ruled both land and home. Behind stone walls, she was prisoner to duty, yet her heart was bound to another, her husband's sworn enemy. Their letters traveled hidden within bread loaves and wine flasks, sealed not with wax but with the promise of silence. Each word was edged with risk. "If I die tomorrow, let this ink be the proof that I lived for you." When the warlord grew suspicious, he ordered his men to search Isolde's chamber. One evening, they found a folded parchment beneath her pillow. Dragged before her husband, she was accused of treachery. For a woman, love could be equated with betrayal. Her passion was seen as conspiracy. Isolde met her end by fire, her ashes scattered on the wind. Yet, hidden deep in the castle's chapel, one letter survived, pressed into the spine of a hymn book. Centuries later, that fragile parchment was uncovered, its seal cracked by trembling hands. The words still burned. A love so fierce it had cost a woman her life. Agnes was a novice in a convent, sworn to silence and prayer. By day, she copied psalms in Latin, her quill tracing holy words across parchment. But at night, her heart betrayed her vow. She began to weave her own verses, psalms not of God, but of passion. She wrote to Brother Matthew, a young monk, who sang in the chapel choir. Their voices had met in hymns, their eyes in stolen glances across the cloister. Soon, secret poems passed between them, hidden inside him. "Your voice is my psalm, your name my prayer," she confessed. That their psalms of passion were a sin more dangerous than theft or blasphemy. When a senior nun discovered a folded verse, Agnes faced ruin. To love a man was to betray her holy vows, and punishment could mean exile or death for seduction. The poems were hidden in the abbey's archives, labeled evidence of temptation. Yet when scholars found them centuries later, they saw not sin, but the echo of forbidden devotion. Agnes's hidden psalms proved that even in cloisters of silence, women dared to sing of love, though the song might end their lives. In a medieval court, scribes recorded every law, every debt, every oath. Yet buried among the scrolls lay a secret. A woman's desperate letters, copied by a sympathetic clerk. Her name was Beatrice, a widow forced to remarry for land and wealth, but her heart belonged to a young page, humble and poor. They met in corners of the marketplace, exchanging notes wrapped in scraps of parchment. The clerk who saw their love pitied her and copied one letter into the margins of a legal record, as if to preserve her truth. Her words bled with longing. "I am a prisoner, yet my heart walks with you." But when rumors reached her husband, Beatrice was dragged before the very court whose records hid her love. Under the scribe's eye, justice was swift and merciless. She was condemned, her reputation torn away. Still, the clerk did not burn her letters. He kept them hidden in the archives, where centuries later, historians uncovered them. In a book of laws and debts, Beatrice's voice whispered of love's defiance. Even under the watchful eyes of power, ink became her rebellion. Cecily lived in a stone convent built upon ancient ley lines, where villagers whispered that the earth itself carried hidden powers. To Cecily, those lines were not of magic, but of longing paths her heart walked in secret. She had once loved a knight, Sir Rohan, before her family forced her into the Vale. Though walls now surrounded her, her love refused to fade. She began to write letters, hiding them between the pages of her breviary, praying they might reach him through the hands of a loyal servant. Her words carried both passion and peril. "The world forbids me, yet my heart follows the lines that lead to you." But when another nun discovered her letters, the convent accused Cecily of consorting with evil spirits. To write of desire was to risk not only scandal, but charges of witchcraft. The letters were sealed away, considered dangerous traces of a sinful woman. Centuries later, when unearthed by archivists, they revealed not sorcery, but sorrow. Cecily's ley lines of longing were nothing more than her heart's desperate map. Her words proved that even in cloistered silence, love sought its path, though every step led closer to ruin. Deep in the royal chancery, scribes recorded crimes, confessions, and punishments. Amongst them lay a strange bundle letters tied with twine, each marked as evidence. They belonged to Isabella, a baker's daughter accused of seducing a nobleman's son. Their letters revealed not seduction, but mutual devotion. Promises scribbled on scraps of parchment, tucked inside loaves of bread. "To taste your words is sweeter than any feast," he had written. But love across class was dangerous. When discovered, Isabella was accused of using witchcraft to bewitch the young man. Her letters were read aloud in court as proof. To confess love was, for her, a confession of guilt. The court sentenced her to exile. Her lover, too powerful to be punished, was forced into marriage with another. The letters, her confessions, were locked in the archives, as if her ink were poison. Centuries later, historians unwrapped the twine. The words once used to condemn Isabella now testified to her humanity. She had loved, she had risked, and she had been silenced. The archive's darkest confessions were not of crimes, but of love so strong it was treated as death itself. Lady Juliana was known in her court for her embroidery,
not her words.
Yet beneath the veil of her duties, she stitched another kind of beauty verses, written in secret. Her quill danced at night, crafting lines of longing for a troubadour who sang in her father's hall. To write love poetry was no crime for men, but for women, it was perilous. Juliana masked her verses within prayers, disguising passion as piety. "Your eyes are the candle by which I see heaven," she wrote, cloaking desire in sacred tones. But when her maid betrayed her, the verses fell into the hands of the bishop's men. They declared her poems dangerous, a temptation that could corrupt virtue and defy order. Juliana was threatened with confinement in a convent, her pen, the weapon of her rebellion. The verses vanished into church records, hidden behind layers of dust and judgment. Centuries later, scholars uncovered them, marveling at her veiled skill.
What had once been condemned as sin was revealed as art. A woman's voice, brave enough to write at the edge of law.
In a bustling port city, Margaret, the daughter of a shipwright, fell in love with a foreign merchant. Their meetings were brief, stolen between sails and sermons. To bridge the distance, she poured her heart onto parchment. Her letters were filled with longing. "Though the sea takes you, my soul sails with you." But parchment carried more than words. It carried evidence. When her brother discovered one letter, he saw dishonor, not devotion. In a society where a woman's purity was her family's wealth, Margaret's passion was treated as betrayal. Dragged before the town magistrate, she was accused of immoral conduct. The punishment loomed: public humiliation, perhaps even banishment. Margaret pleaded that her words were only dreams, but her letters betrayed her. Though she was spared death, she was forced into a convent, her merchant never to return. The parchment that had once carried love became the reason for her punishment. Centuries later, the very letter that condemned her was found among civic records. It no longer whispered shame, but courage, the courage of a woman who dared to love, though the cost was everything. In the grand halls of York, Lady Catherine was admired for her grace, her embroidery, and her piety. To the world, she was the image of a gentlewoman. But behind the cold stone walls of her husband's manor, Catherine wrote dangerous words. Her heart belonged not to her husband, but to a knight sworn to another lord. Their love was forbidden by blood and by law. Letters passed through servants, hidden in baskets of herbs, folded inside prayer sheets. "I would rather risk the blade than live without your breath upon mine," she confessed.
When one letter fell into the wrong hands, whispers spread like fire.
To love across loyalty was treason, and treason meant death. Catherine was spared execution only because her family paid heavily in gold, but her reputation was destroyed forever, branded a woman of dangerous ink. Centuries later, masons repairing the manor found a letter wedged between stones of the chapel wall. Its ink had faded, but its passion burned through time. Catherine's hidden words revealed a truth the world tried to silence. Even the gentlest women carried hearts bold enough to defy stone, law, and fate. In a monastery's library, monks copied holy texts with perfect care. But within the margins of one manuscript lay tiny, fragile notes, words, not of scripture, but of love. They were written by Eleanor, a noblewoman who had secretly borrowed the book to practice reading. To her, the margins became a refuge. She inscribed messages to her secret beloved Sir Hugh. "Between these lines, I hide my soul, that you alone may see me." Each note was risky, for the book belonged to the abbey. When the monks discovered her hand in the margins, they saw not romance, but defilement. To write worldly passion into sacred pages was a grave sin. Eleanor's family was warned, and she was forced into silence. The manuscript, however, survived. Her words in the margins, scratched faintly beside prayers, remained hidden for centuries, too small for censors to erase. When modern scholars examined the book, they uncovered her whispers, still pressed against holy words. Love, fragile and forbidden, had clung to the margins of history itself. Isabel, the daughter of a prosperous wool merchant, was promised in marriage to a man she scarcely knew, yet her heart was already captured by John, an apprentice mason who worked on the cathedral walls. Their courtship could never be public, so it unfolded in secret letters. Every market day, Isabel slipped folded parchment into the basket of a trusted maid, who carried it past the guild halls to John. Her words were simple, but daring. The stones you raise are strong, but my love for you is stronger still. Each letter risked ruin. If discovered, Isabel could lose not only her reputation, but her life. Women accused of deception or disobedience often faced brutal punishment. For John, the danger was exile, or the stocks. Their letters continued until one was intercepted by Isabel's father. John was dismissed from his work, and Isabel was confined to her chamber until she was married off. The clandestine courtship ended in silence. Centuries later, a bundle of their letters was found hidden in a chest beneath cathedral rubble. What had once been a perilous secret became proof that love could carve its place, even in stone and shadow. In a medieval village, Margaret was known as obedient and dutiful. But in truth, she was reckless in love. Her admirer was no knight or nobleman, but a hooded outlaw, living in the forest beyond the law. They exchanged secret missives through hunters and traveling minstrels. His words were bold, hers tender. When you pass beneath the oak, my heart follows the rustle of your cloak. For Margaret, every letter was both a thrill and a threat. But rumors spread quickly. To consort with an outlaw was to invite shame and suspicion of treachery. When a missive was discovered by her cousin, Margaret's family panicked. To protect their honor, they accused the outlaw of sorcery and turned Margaret's letters over to the sheriff. The outlaw was hunted down, and Margaret was locked away in a priory. Her secret words, once tokens of joy, became evidence of crime. Centuries later, those same missives were uncovered in dusty court rolls. The outlaw's fate was forgotten, but Margaret's words endured. They revealed not scandal, but a young woman's courage to love a man when even Cupid himself had to wear a hood. In a small priory, Brother Anselm worked as a scribe, copying legal charters and sermons. But one day, a woman's trembling hand left him with a choice. Her name was Alice, the miller's wife, trapped in a loveless and violent marriage. She begged him to carry her secret letters to a traveling minstrel she adored. Anselm hesitated, for he knew the risk. A woman's written confession of love could destroy not only her, but also anyone who aided her. Yet her words moved him. Your song is the only truth in a world built on lies. Against his better judgment, he delivered them. But when the village priest discovered the scribe's secret errands, scandal erupted. Alice was accused of dishonor, the minstrel banished, and Anselm nearly the community whispered that women's letters could unravel the order of God himself. Alice's letters were seized and stored in the priory archives, marked as evidence of sin. Centuries later, scholars uncovered them. Their ink faded, but their meaning powerful. The scribe's secret showed how fragile a community's order could be when confronted with a woman's dangerous truth. Her written love. Lady Eleanor lived under the iron will of her father, who demanded she marry for wealth, not affection. But Eleanor's heart burned for a scholar who taught her Latin in stolen lessons. With ink and quill, she began her rebellion. Her letters were bold, filled with learning and longing. You have given me not only words, but wings. For a woman to write freely of love was scandal enough. For her to use Latin, the language of scholars and priests, was unthinkable. Her father discovered one letter and called it an act of rebellion. To him, she had shamed the family and mocked authority. Eleanor was locked in her chamber, her scholar banished from the city. Yet her hidden letters remained. When archivists uncovered them centuries later,
They realized their rarity. A woman writing in a man's language, not in whispers, but in flames.
Eleanor's rebellion had failed in life,
But her ink endured, turning punishment into testimony.
her letters became proof that even in the darkest archives, women's voices refused to vanish.
Love was her rebellion,
An ink,
her weapon.
In the royal chancery, clerks recorded lawsuits, land disputes, and royal decrees. Yet hidden among these rolls of parchment was something far less official, a packet of letters that told a forbidden tale. They belonged to Joan, the daughter of a minor noble, who had fallen in love with a knight sworn to the king. Their romance was dangerous. Not only because Joan was already promised in marriage, but because her knight was accused of disloyalty. To be linked with him meant risking her honor and her life. Her letters, smuggled by servants, were filled with quiet desperation.
Though the crown may take your sword, it shall never steal my heart.
When their secret was discovered, Joan was summoned to testify before the king's council. Her words, read aloud from the chancery rolls, were twisted into evidence of treason. The knight was executed, and Joan was forced into marriage with a wealthy ally of the crown. But her letters sealed inside the chancery records remained.
Centuries later, historians unrolled the parchment and uncovered her dangerous affections.
What once condemned her became her only voice, a love too bold to bury. Margaret, a young noblewoman, lived in a manor where every action was watched. Her only freedom lay in the letters she sealed with her own small crest, writing secretly to a poet who visited her household.
Her seal, a delicate rose, became their symbol.
"Wherever you see this mark, know it is my heart laid bare," she told him. Their romance grew through hidden scrolls, tucked beneath altar cloths and inside hunting satchels. But one day, a servant intercepted a sealed letter and delivered it to her father. The rose, meant to signify love, now marked her guilt. Her father raged that her seal dishonored the family name. For a woman, sealing a love letter was as dangerous as sealing a contract hit, bound her to a ruinous fate. Margaret was confined, her poet banished. Yet one letter, never opened, remained hidden inside a carved chest. Centuries later, it was discovered, the wax rose still unbroken.
Historians dared not crack the seal, leaving the letter a mystery.
The hidden seal became a symbol of what was risked. A romance so perilous it could destroy a woman, yet so powerful it remained untouched by time. In the bustling streets of Bruges, Anne, the daughter of a merchant, was expected to obey her family's will. Marriage was a contract, love a luxury she could never afford. Yet Anne carried within her a hunger for words and for freedom. She began to write letters to Peter, a painter's apprentice who filled the margins of his sketchbooks with her image. Their love was not sanctioned by wealth or status, only by ink and parchment. "The river may carry ships away," she wrote, "but nothing shall carry away my heart." Each letter was a defiance of her family's power. To write was to resist, to claim a voice in a world that demanded silence. But her rebellion could not last. When a servant betrayed her, the letters were seized. Anne was forced into marriage with a wealthy trader, and Peter vanished into obscurity. Centuries later, their parchment passions reappeared in a merchant's archive. The ink had browned with age, but its fire still burned. Anne's letters prove that even when the tide of duty swept women into silence, their passions left marks that no wave could wash away. In a quiet village, rumors spread faster than fire. Emma, the daughter of a blacksmith, was caught in the center of scandal when a bundle of her letters was discovered in a priestess' possession. They were not written to her betrothed, but to the priest's own brother, a traveling bard. Emma's words revealed a heart brimming with desire. "Your song lingers in my veins, longer than any prayer." For a woman to write with such passion was unthinkable. The villagers called her shameless, accusing her of dishonoring both family and faith. The priest, desperate to protect his brother's reputation, turned Emma's letters over to the bishop. What had been private confessions of love now became public evidence of sin. Emma was forced into penance, paraded through the village in humiliation. Her letters were sealed in the diocesan archives, branded as proof of corruption. Centuries later, when scholars opened the files, they found not scandal, but poetry. Emma's letters, once condemned, shone as rare gems of a woman's unguarded voice. The archive stales of illicit love revealed the truth. What society called scandal was often nothing more than the courage to love openly. In a scribe's workshop in Florence, parchment was more precious than gold. Only the wealthy could afford to waste it, yet Lucia, a merchant's daughter, used scraps of discarded vellum to write what she dared not say. Aloud letters of desire to her cousin's tutor. Her words were both tender and daring. "Your voice teaches me letters, but my heart reads only you. She hid the notes beneath the bindings of her prayer book, passing them through her maid. Each sheet of parchment carried not only longing, but danger.
When her father found one such scrap, outrage followed.
Paper, meant for contracts and holy texts, had been defiled with sinful passion. Lucia's family feared scandal, for desire written by a woman was more dangerous than any rumor.
She was locked away, her letters burned before her eyes.
Yet one escaped tucked inside the tutor's satchel. Centuries later, it resurfaced in a Florentine archive, its edges frayed, but its meaning clear. Lucia paid dearly for the price of paper, but her forbidden script endured.
What was once shame became proof that women's desires, though silenced,
still carved themselves onto history's fragile pages. In a monastery's library, great tomes of theology lined the shelves. But it was not the holy texts themselves that told the boldest story. It was the margins. Lady Cecily, a noble patron of the abbey, often borrowed books to display her piety. In truth, she used the margins to leave secret notes for her beloved, a young scholar who copied many tiny words written between Latin prayers, became their hidden dialogue. Though the saints watch me, my thoughts belong to you. Their marginalia grew into a romance, scribbled in the spaces no one else dared to look. But one sharp-eyed abbot noticed faint writing beside the psalms. He ordered the scholar whipped and accused Cecily of sacrilege. To defile the word of God with love was treated as a crime against heaven itself. The scholar disappeared. Cecily was forced into silence, yet their words remained, faint but legible. Centuries later, when researchers examined the manuscript under lamplight, the lovers' secret notes were uncovered. The marginalia of desire had survived judgment, fire, and fear, proving that love can live even in the smallest corners of history. In a damp chamber of a seaside castle, Eleanor found solace only in her letters. Married to a cruel lord who spent more time at war than at home, she poured her heart onto thin scraps of paper, writing to a knight who once saved her from drowning as a child. Her words were fragile but fierce. The sea may batter the walls, but my love batters, my heart harder still. She hid the notes inside shells and trinkets, passing them through servants. But weathered paper does not hide forever. One letter, soft by damp and salt, slipped into the wrong hands. Her husband discovered it and thundered with rage. Eleanor was dragged before his court, accused of dishonor. To write of love was treated as treachery. Though Eleanor swore the words were harmless dreams, the liability was clear. Her reputation crumbled, and she was confined to a tower until her death.
Centuries later, one surviving letter Weatherstand and Frageoise found pressed inside a family chronicle.
Its ink still whispered her longing. Once condemned as liability, it became evidence of a woman's humanity. In medieval Paris, Margot, the daughter of a bookseller, secretly learned to write. For women, literacy was often discouraged. Too much knowledge was seen as rebellion. But Margot wielded her pen with passion, writing to a scholar who frequented her father's shop. Her letters were not timid. They challenged the order of her world. Why should men's words rule when a woman's heart knows its own law? Each stroke of her pen was a protest against silence. When the letters were discovered, outrage followed. Clerics accused her of arrogance. Even her own father claimed she had shamed him. Her dangerous pen was confiscated, and Margot was threatened with banishment unless she promised never to write again. The scholar fled, but Margot's words endured. A sympathetic apprentice preserved one of her letters inside the cover of a book. Centuries later, scholars uncovered it, marveling at its defiance. What had once been treated as dangerous became precious, proof that women as voices had always fought to be heard. Margot's pen had been silenced in life, but in history, it wrote louder than ever. In a quiet priory, Sister Agnes was known for her silence. She rarely spoke, moving like a shadow through the cloisters. Yet silence could not bind her heart. She began to compose secret stanza-shored poems of Lavon scraps of wax tablets. Her stanzas were dedicated to a traveling pilgrim who once stopped at the convent gate. His voice had lingered in her memory like a song. "Your eyes are the psalm, My silence cannot sing, she wrote. Each hidden stanza was slipped into cracks of the convent wall, entrusted to no one but time. Yet silence has a way of unraveling. Another nun found one scrap and delivered it to the abbess. Agnes was accused of breaking her vows and tempted with exile. Her stanzas were collected and hidden, labeled proof of sin. But centuries later, masons repairing the convent wall uncovered the fragile scraps. Those secret stanzas revealed not a sinner, but a silent woman who dared to love in the only way she could. Her silence had been broken not by her voice, but by her pen. Isolda, a noblewoman, kept her letters locked inside a carved chest beneath her bed. Each was written with a quill dipped in trembling ink, addressed to a squire sworn to her brother's service. The chest was her sanctuary. When I cannot speak, I let the quill breathe for me. She confessed in one note, but secrets locked away have a way of being found. One night, her jealous maid broke into the chest and delivered the letters to Isolda's family. The discovery was ruinous. The letters were read aloud before her kin, their passion treated as proof of shame. Her family threatened to bury her reputation forever, forcing her into a convent to erase her name from memory. Yet one letter, overlooked in the chest's corner, survived. Centuries later, it was found in a manor attic, still folded, still sealed. That single sheet of ink told the story of a woman who risked everything for love and lost. Her quill had written her heart into the world, even as the lock meant to protect her became the key to her undoing. In the bustling city of London, Catherine, the daughter of a guildmaster, lived under the strict gaze of her family. She was destined for a marriage of trade and alliance. But her heart wandered elsewhere to a young apprentice who sang ballads in the market square. Their romance was built on correspondence. Letters passed through street children and hidden inside baskets of bread. Catherine's words were tender yet reckless. Though the world sees me bound, I am free only in you. But freedom carried a cost. When her father intercepted one letter, he declared it treachery to family honor. The guild accused Catherine of betrayal, and her romance was painted as scandal. For a woman, to love outside expectation was to invite ruin. Catherine was disowned, her letters confiscated and locked in the city's archive as evidence of dishonor. The apprentice vanished, leaving only her ink behind. Centuries later, scholars uncovered the correspondence, marveling at its beauty. What once ruined Catherine became her immortality, a testimony of love written boldly against a world that feared it. In a snowbound village, Elspeth tended her hearth each night, the flames her only companions. Yet her heart belonged to Thomas, a wanderer who promised to return with spring. She wrote him letters by firelight, her ink faint and shaky, but her devotion strong, as the hearth keeps me warm. So your memory keeps me alive. She hid the letters beneath the ashes, praying they would never be found. But secrets do not always stay buried. One winter evening, a neighbor discovered the hidden parchments while tending the fire. Whispers spread quickly of a woman whose heart strayed beyond her household. Elspeth was accused of dishonor and brought before the parish court. Though she pleaded innocence, the letters spoke louder than her voice. She was fined, shamed, and forced into silence. Thomas never returned,
And the hearth grew cold.
Centuries later, a bundle of charred letters was found in the ruins of her cottage. Their words, though fragile, survived the flames. Elspeth's hidden hearts revealed a truth long forgotten. Even the quietest women dared to write love into the world, though the fire threatened to consume them. In a French court, Lady Blanche was famed for her wit and beauty, yet her life was tightly controlled by politics. Promised to a powerful duke, she secretly loved a court musician. Their only chance at survival lay in coded letters, using musical notations and patterns of verse. Blanche disguised her words. A melody meant I miss you. A rhyme meant I am yours. The musician answered in riddles. To others, their letters looked like harmless poems, but to the lovers, they were a lifeline. One evening, the Duke's spies deciphered a letter. What seemed like poetry was revealed as passion. Blanche's secret became her peril. Accused of dishonor and treason, she was confined to a tower. The musician was executed, his songs silenced, yet one coded letter escaped the purge, hidden in a volume of courtly verse. Centuries later, scholars uncovered its cipher. What was once a fatal risk revealed a brilliant system of survival, a woman daring write her heart while the world tried to erase it. In a cloistered abbey, Sister Helena lived between vows of silence and the threat of violence beyond its walls. But vows could not erase her, past she had once loved a knight who swore to return for her. Helena wrote him letters even after taking the veil, pouring her soul into every line. My vows bind my lips, but not my heart. Each parchment was carried secretly by a novice who pitied her. When the abbess discovered the letters, Helena was denounced as a traitor to God. Worse still, news spread that the knight had been slain in battle. Her words, instead of reaching him, became evidence against her. She was whipped, silenced, and locked away in penance. The letters were hidden in the abbey's records, labeled dangerous. Centuries later, historians uncovered them. Between vows and violence, Helena had risked everything to preserve her love and ink. Though her world condemned her, her letters lived on fragile proof that even bound by vows, a woman's heart could still defy silence.